Okay. Oh yeah, figures it's working now. Yeah. Okay. Anyways, guys. Okay, welcome back to lecture 2. Today we're going to be talking about mechanics and whatever else it says there. No, gameplay. This is kind of like the step in capstone and device design where you're going into needs and user specifications and trying to make that that calculated jump to what is really important. But at this point, it's usually a first pass. I did a product design for somebody once where I did this first step, and it was thankfully I was applying the prototyping principles because I did about maybe about a couple hours of designing, sent the file over to the guy. He said everything looked great, go for it. I actually made my build next onto cardboard or poster board, and I thought, hey, this is cool. Took pictures, sent it to the guy. He goes, everything looks great. I said, okay, I'll go up to sheet metal, and I moved over to sheet metal. Took pictures, sent it to the guy, said everything looks great. I'm like, oh, this is awesome. This is going really fast. And so then I decided, well, what would be really cool is if there was a way for me to get him the product and let him see, if this is what he wants. And so I decided to try and do like everything on 8.5 by 11s and email it to him in a PDF, and he could print it out, and I kind of labeled like, how would you cut it out, glue it together, or stick it together, or whatever. And he did it, and he said, this is a piece of crap. And I was like, great, awesome, what? Wow, what's wrong with it? And then he gave me this email that was like, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. And like 20 pages later, there was almost nothing in there that he liked, and I was just like, wow. And I'm like, okay, so let's go back to the beginning. What do you really want? And I got a little bit more feedback from him, and a lot of it was tuning my head to his head and trying to figure out, what exactly was what was he really looking for. And it was really cool because by the time I got on the 3rd or 4th version, and this all took like, now I'm like really quickly focusing on really quick fix-its, and another couple hours really of work, even though it was like weeks later. I finally got to the point where he was really happy, and I decided, okay, this is it. I'm going to go cut the steel, weld it together, forge out what he wants, and then get it to him. And that literally took, I almost like, it was like a 4-hour sleeping period. This was when my son was like, baby, so I was up at all hours. And I literally did all the work in about 40 hours on a weekend and sent him the pictures, and he was just ecstatic. It was exactly what he wanted. Mailed it to him, and he got it like 2 days later, and he was tremendously happy. And so it felt like I wasted a lot of time because of all the little spotty things I had to do to get it there. But if I had made that first product, I would have wasted about 40 hours making what he didn't want. Also, I didn't realize this, but I was making jigs and tools and learning assembly techniques as I was making these really quick prototypes that I actually probably saved a lot of time. And in the end, I started really thinking about it. I probably saved myself about 3 times the amount of time by just doing it, the prototyping method. And that's how, what we're going to do today in the game world is really, we're going to start talking mechanics, start thinking about the basic steps. What really fundamentally are you trying to, make your game do? Make the person that's playing it interact with that world. A lot of this comes in the medical device world comes from reading literature, talking to doctors, talking to patients. You're doing needs assessment, in a variety of ways, maybe surveys. Here we're going to allow a little bit of wiggle room and say, just be innovative and look at, like different state-of-the-arts and find a gap in that technology or that product line and create something new. But you can do different things too. You can go online, just read rules. The real mechanics of a game is just the rules. And if you can get those basics down and kind of quickly figure out what they are, play that first round of one game and then switch to another one and see how it's different. If you had a chance to play Zombie 15, this is a really new one that's really cool. It's got a simple mechanic. Every minute there's a little soundtrack and it goes, and that makes you do something in the game. If you play without that soundtrack, it's just to learn the rules. They suggest just learn the rules first, don't play the soundtrack. You get a very different game, you get a very different feel. The first time I played it took 45 minutes and it's supposed to be a 15-minute game. It was very laid back. You guys played it? Yeah, it's a very laid back game, and then all of a sudden you turn that soundtrack on and your hair's on end and everyone's screaming, and it's a very different thing, and that one little simple twist in the mechanic did that. So then we'll do some more game playing, and then we also had DT1 was due before class, so everyone did that. Thank you. There's a really quick interlude though. Anyone that was interested in honors contracts? There we go. Okay, there's a list. over here. I talked to somebody very high up there. Her name rhymes with Negi Pelson, and she does not want to be identified, though, because she's unofficially gave us something that we should officially do, or something like that. Don't do the honors contract in the class because it's only 1 credit. But if we do a 394, I can give you the 3 credits for the amount of work that you're going to do. So I have a list up here. You can sign up after, and we could talk about different things you can do. So there's a whole bunch of different things up there. That's all on the list. So going back to one of the state-of-the-arts you guys looked at, and it's not supposed to be SOTA. It's Secrets of the Third Reich. This is Jim and John's. Well, actually, it's just really Jim and his other John in his life, his brother. Made this game called Secrets of the Third Reich. And it's a very different game. It's called tabletop, and they put all this crap on a table. And the idea behind it, the mechanic behind it, is that you have this infinite replayable surface. It's your table. You can move things around, and it changes the game up dramatically. The gameplay is very different. You don't move in terms of how many spaces you take. You actually have to measure everything. It usually comes with rule books. This is like past my patience level. So many things you got to know and do and remember to play this game. It's very different. And I told you about the bar napkin. He actually had bar napkin number 2. Jim just moved, and he found all his stuff. So he sent me these pictures of bar napkin number 2. And the idea that he had at this point was, instead of measuring things and you'd have that, I take so many steps. Well, the idea he had here was each one of these tiles is actually, these are individually cut out. Allows you to make a board that you can move around and change every time you play. And it was a very different mechanic than moving on an infinite surface. So this was basically his alpha for this new world. Whoops. Inevitably, it turned into Incursion, what you guys see, which is a fixed board. So he had another test, and he might have done some play testing and realized there was no advantage to have all those other parts. Probably what really happened, if you think about it, if you look at all the different surfaces you would have to cut, depending on how many of these parts you would have to have dies to cut those things. And anyone that wants to learn how to make these dies for cutting, I shouldn't tell you how much they cost, because then you're going to ask me to pay you. They basically cost like $2,000 per die. So if you made a game, I don't think we have it with us, but I'll eventually bring it. Michael Coe, who's going to come here and visit us, made this game called El Dorado or something like that. It was something about the gold. Oh, Lost Dutchman's Mine. That's what it was. The whole game is just 20 sheets or 30 sheets of cardstock, and it's all punched with the same die. The artwork is different on them, and so the way you play the game is changed by which pieces you use. Really brilliant, $2,000 fabrication setup. That's it. Something like this, depending on how many pieces that comes out and how many boards they actually had, could be a very expensive game to make versus one board. Incursion's mechanics are actually really, if you haven't, how many people had a chance to play Incursion? You guys played it? You guys played it? That's it? Oh, you guys played it. Okay. So the mechanics it's kind of simple. It's replenish command points, which is how you get into bidding and getting action. You replenish your hands, which is your cards. And then you get into all these different options you have during an action phase. And it's just very simple. I mean, that's really what the mechanics are. You keep it very simple. Jim comes from that tabletop world, and I mentioned those rules. So he gets into detail, lots of detail. Probably way much more than I can handle detail. But anyways, there are cards and everything, some special rules. The whole idea at this point, what you guys should be doing is thinking about the mechanics. What are you going to try and do? When you're working on your alpha, really at this point, going from that bar napkin, the next thing you should do is start cutting up pieces of paper to represent your tiles, your cards, anything that you expect a player to interact with on your surface or your board, and maybe your stand-ins or whatever. You don't want to spend a lot of time at this point. Number things, 1, 2, 3, or label them really quick. You don't want to spend a lot of time on digital art yet. This is the point where you could get really fixed on something that's so freaking cool, but it wrecks my game, that you'll get in trouble. Just make it, no love. Just get it made, test things out, test the mechanics. Does that seem to be fun? Is it interactive? One thing some people hate is when they're playing a game where you sit there like this and wait for that slow poke to take their turn. That's my personal pet peeve. I call it my mother-in-law. if, buddy. Edit, please. Anyways, yeah, it's one of those things that's really annoying. If you played Zombie 15 with the timer, you're actually helping people out to get the turn going. It's a very different game. Anyone ever play Cards Against Humanity? Yeah. So you guys know about that type of aspect. There's different things you can do. So, try it out, test it out. If you like it, keep going. And that's when you can get to us with a beta that looks a little bit better, and you got some ideas of what you want cut out, how much material you need. We're actually going to really push you guys to see who can go first and get someone on the laser cutter by week 5, 6, or whenever. There's no timeline on that. In Capstone, that usually will happen to you somewhere around December, January, maybe February. I don't want to, and that usually is the whole class is held back. Dr. Kaplan's in there now. It's going to be a little bit different. Mentors are always pushing our students. But in this class, it's totally asynchronous. Whoever's ready to go first gets first dibs on the equipment. We'll have 3D printers in here. We'll have the laser cutters. All the stuff you guys will have access to. So when you come down to it, some of the specifications the user needs will be things like how many players are involved, what role do they play. Role in the sense of, is it everyone cooperatively playing the game? Are they competitively playing a game? Is there a mixture? Is there any artificial intelligence in the game, a deck of cards or something? Think of, what are the procedures, the different steps they got to do. Keep the rules short. We have FDA to worry about, and internet geeks are the meanest people in the world when it comes to rules. Look up any game that's been beta tested online. People are really mean there. I don't know, maybe as bad as the FDA, if not worse. Resources, how do you collect? How do you know you're winning the game? How do you know you won? And then different types of conflict that can be in there. Go back to brainstorming. We mentioned that earlier. Totally, ditch an idea or ditch the whole game and try and come up with the alternative world of what if? What if we did something completely different? Save those thoughts. Write them down. Make sure you have alpha and everything documented. Just like in the FDA, we ask for documentation. Just like in Capstone, you want to have your main primary plan where if I made my nanoscale sensor that could detect cancer by just waving it at someone from 12 miles away, and it costs less than $1 to make, that might not work. You might want to have a really good solid backup plan, and it may be a dog from 2 feet away or whatever it is, but you want to have something testable, quantifiable, but real too. You want to have a solid backup plan for Capstone and in here. Because otherwise you don't want to be left with crap. You don't want to have like, okay, now that our main game sucks, what do we do? And in essence, in the Capstone happens is you restart. Try something you didn't try before. You got to do more literature. You got to maybe quit your project, start a new team. So many bad things can happen that you want to be, really good to have a good backup plan. And that whole measure twice, cut once. I'll talk to you guys more about that next week. Oh God. But anyway, so again, really stressing this. If you guys, if you really want, you're going to make a big board. We have a roll of paper that we'll have Steve go get, and it's, sorry, dude. It's really like 3 feet wide or something like that, and it's like 200 feet long. If you want to make one piece, big board, don't worry about folding and all that crap just yet. We'll run and grab that, but take everything down to scale. Can you make it on a smaller thing? Can you just get the ideas worked out on the alpha? Use the least amount of material as possible. In industry, the business people will really push you at this stage and say prototype as fast as possible because we don't give a shit. Get it made and get it so we can test it. Then you get that MVP data set and we know this thing works. We're going to be golden. We can take that money. We'll go do some VC funding rounds and we'll get money off that data. They don't want you stuck in prototyping too long. I'd rather have you prototype long enough is the way I call it. Make sure you got something solid. Jim sent me a whole bunch of things. So this is a lot of his early artwork and stuff like that, which was really cool. So it wasn't just a bar napkin he had. Anyway, so in next class, we'll start actually releasing the hounds. You guys will, not call it dogs, but you guys will actually get on the equipment, start building things. We have a product that I have copyright permission from Jim and John to actually, I made another game. Blake made some components, some of the guys in the lab helped out. And you guys are actually going to make that copy of that. We have a tool that we made up for quality control. Somewhere in here. Hello. Oh, we threw it away. Oh, I don't have one. Oh, right there. So we have a quality control tool. This or this can measure everything. This can measure anything you need. In the game, there's going to be certain things that we're going to ask you to tell us. You know, when you quality control someone else's game, did they have 20 components that all measured up right, or did 20 of them suck? Maybe 5 sucked, or whatever. We're going to have you guys quantify that. So in the next DT, there's a design task. But then there's also 10% of your grade, that quality control thing. You'll have 3 weeks to work on this, so don't worry about it. You're going to have to build a game as a team, and then individually you'll each get a tool, and you'll quantify someone else's game. And so you'll just rotate around the components amongst your team. So teams that are near each other will just switch. We have an odd number of teams in this class, I think, so maybe we'll just rotate some math, hyperbaric math. Someone will figure it out. And that's about it. We are going to assign that design task next week. Not right now, right? Not, okay. So the last thing we got to bring up, we have some people that don't have a team. Where are you? Anyone without a team? No one? Okay. We will find you. How many teams of 4 do we have? Do we have any teams of 4? We have, everyone's a team of 5. My math must be really whack. Okay, awesome. All right, guys, get playing.